Welcome once again to The Russell Brown Show, and this episode where I'll be working with Adobe Photoshop Touch here on this tablet. And in this project, I'm going to give you some super user tips and techniques for cloning, some quick and easy things you need to know. Now, here's my finished project that I'm going to complete. Let's go ahead and close that back down, and let's open up my starting project right here. Because not only am I going to demonstrate how to clone things here inside of Photoshop Touch, I'm also going to show you a great technique for importing images in to help you in your workflow. Now, of course, Photoshop Touch has the ability to mask items, but with something in this case, like the umbrella that I'm using in this project, it had such a nice refined curved edge that I used the Bezier pen tool inside of Photoshop to make the selection, and then I brought it in, of course, as a PNG file. Because we all know that if you save an image as a 24-bit PNG inside of Photoshop, then upload it to the cloud and bring it into Photoshop, you can then maintain the transparency that you created inside of Photoshop. So work with them together to create really complex selections. So here it is, floating here on the screen. What I'm going to do now, of course, it's coming in and it's floating there. I can adjust its size by clicking here on the corner and scaling it down. I really like the display readout at the top of the screen, which shows me the size right there. Clicking here in the center, I can then drag it around and position it like this. That looks pretty good. I'm going to leave it right there. I'm going to select Done right here at the base. Now what I want to do is duplicate this and have multiple versions in the sky looking like they're raining down. So I'm going to take this layer. Let's actually drag this layer back down here to the base here. I'm going to target that layer and then bring it down here. Then let's duplicate this layer with the plus sign right here in my menu, and want to duplicate layer. So I have a second copy. Let's use my move tool up here at the top, and let's move this off to the side, and let's rotate it, just like this. Now what I find is that when I start to move things around, I could move things and I could duplicate them one by one with this process of creating a new layer, then duplicating, then moving. But what I'm finding is that cloning is going to work better for me. So let's move this up into the sky, click on the corner, and let's drop its size down, just like this. A little bit smaller. The raindrops are a little bit smaller than that. That looks great. Click Done. So I have one new layer with one umbrella there. What I want to do now is make copies of that. So let's go right over here to my menu, click here, and let's go down to the clone tool right here, the clone stamp tool right there. Let's check out my settings here for my brush size. It's pretty good size. It doesn't need to be really sharp. That's about the hardness I need. And I want flow at 100% and opacity at 100%. Looks great. Let's close that down. Notice that the source indicator right over here is highlighted with white. That means it's ready and waiting for me. All I do is click once on my screen, and notice that it leaves a marker there indicating what I'm cloning. And now what I can do is go over here and I can start to clone another copy. What I find is this is much easier than going through and copying that layer and moving it around. So let's go ahead, target this again, and let's put another version right over here. So I can start to design the location of my different raindrops. Now the trick here is that I'm going to put these in, and now let's put one more in. In fact, pick up my source, paint with my source. There we go. Now all of these are on the same layer. Here's a great tip and technique. Let's go over here to my marquee tool, and then I'm going to click and drag and select just one of them on that layer. And now I'm going to use my transformation tools to drop these down in size, just like this. So I can create different versions from these different sizes I've made. And transform. So I can create these. Let's move this one over here a little bit more. Done. And let's do one more. Let's do one, a really, really small one. So let's select this one right here and transform. So what I want to do is create enough variations on this theme. Really tiny one. There we go. So now I have a variety of different sizes. Let's go back over to the clone stamp tool. And now we're armed with the ability to put in different sizes. I can grab that size. I can grab this size and put one there, just like this. So I can start to design exactly the sizes I want and the locations. You're creating a palette of different sized, in this case, umbrellas that you can paint around on the screen. And I find this technique of one layer with the clone tool and then scaling it works really nicely. Okay, let's finish this off and get really crazy here. I'm going to target that layer and let's make this a little bit wild, a little bit Salvador Dali madness here. Let's go in and add a drop shadow to that background layer. So I'm going to go to my basic effects, drop shadow. And then I can adjust the distance by clicking here. That looks good. Drop my opacity back a little bit. Maybe blur it just a little bit more. That looks great. And apply. Great. Now, for special effects and projects like this, I like to bring in additional layers to add, effects that will help distress the surface and take it away from this looking too real. So I have another layer here that I've brought in, an actual textured layer. I'm going to turn on that layer and I'm going to demonstrate to you that this layer is currently set in the overlay mode. But if I switch this to the normal mode, you can see that I have its opacity set to 63%. And in normal mode, it takes on a transparent quality, but in the mode of overlay, it then blends in to the background. So bringing in these textured layers can help add some nice effects. And as you saw in one of my earlier presentations about Photoshop Touch, let's bring in that flashlight technique where I use the flashlight and I brought in effects where I use the flashlight to point right into the lens on an active camera fill layer to get effects like this. And there's nothing better. If one looks good, two might look even better to finish off our project. So there you have it, a combination of techniques, but what I really wanted to focus on was the ability to clone things and duplicate them on one layer for a simple process of cloning in a project like this. Give it a try.